My mom tricked the world into thinking me and my sister were child prodigies. It started when we were 5 years old and my mom saw this documentary about an autistic genius kid who calculated impossible math in his head. She looked at my identical twin Selena and I and said, "If you'd just been born with scrambled brains, I could have been loaded." 3 days later, Mom called us into the dining room. The table was covered in phone books, calendars going back 50 years and stacks of cards. "Memorize these," she said. Selena dove right in, already flipping through pages. I just stared, waiting for the punchline that never came. Soon, Mom started waking us up at 3 a.m. to drill calculations. "Faster! One more time!" She'd scream into the megaphone while we solved algebra sleep-deprived. Selena would rattle off perfect answers while I'd mess up every third one. "She's sabotaging this," Mom would scream at me. Selena would just look at me with this little smile, like she knew something I didn't. The worst part was when Mom figured out Selena actually had a gift. Not full savant, but something. She could do 3-digit multiplication in her head, remember entire pages after reading them once. Mom started calling her my little computer, and me, the liability. Selena ate it up. She'd practice constantly, even when Mom wasn't around. I'd catch her at night, flashlight under her blanket, memorizing pi to 100 digits for fun. Mom coached us for hours on our backstory. We supposedly had an accident at age 4 that rewired our brains. She made Selena the math genius and me the human calendar, since that only required memorization, not talent. Less emotion, she'd demand from me. "Selena's perfect. Be more like Selena." Selena would demonstrate her blank stare, her monotone voice, how she could make her eyes go dead. Our first gig was at this private collector's house, some creepy rich guy who collected extraordinary children for dinner parties. $500 for 2 hours. His guests would test us while eating caviar. Selena would calculate square roots faster than they could type them into phones. I'd mess up dates just enough that Mom would dig her nails into my shoulder. Selena never missed. Not once. The collectors loved her. The money was almost sickening. Mom started booking us at academic conferences, private schools wanting to inspire their students, tech companies wanting to study us. Selena thrived. She'd started believing her own act, referring to herself in third person, calling normal kids neurotypicals, with this superior tone. During one university demonstration, a professor asked if we ever wished we were different. I said yes. Selena said, "Why would we want to be inferior?" Mom beamed at her, but then came the twist. Selena started seeing patterns everywhere, real ones. She'd wake up screaming about number sequences in her dreams. She'd count my breaths while I slept, writing down the patterns. She filled notebooks with equations she said explained everything from how many times I blinked to when Mom would lose her temper. "It's all math," she'd whisper. "I can predict everything now." At night, I'd lie in bed listening to Selena mumble calculations. She'd covered her walls with formulas, convinced she'd found some code in the memorized data. "Don't you see it?" she'd ask me. "How it all connects?" I told her one night we should quit. Just fail on purpose. Be normal. Selena laughed. "I don't want to be normal anymore. I want to solve it. The pattern behind everything." We lasted 8 months before it all went to hell. We were at this psychiatric research facility. They paid thousands to study genius twins. A neurologist scanned our brains while we performed. She pulled Mom aside after. I heard fragments. "Unusual activity," and "one is genuine," and "the other is clearly performing." Mom tried to leave, but security stopped us. The doctor wanted to separate us for individual testing. They took Selena first. When she came back 3 hours later, her eyes were wild. "They know," she whispered. "They know I'm real and you're not. Mom's going to be so angry at you." She was right. Mom locked me in my room alone that night. I could hear her and Selena talking, laughing even, planning something. "We're so screwed," I said to no one. Through the wall, I heard Selena reciting prime numbers like a lullaby. The next morning, Mom sat us down on Selena's bed. Selena was wearing her best dress, smiling like it was her birthday. "I found a solution," Mom said, but she was only looking at Selena. Her eyes had that dangerous shine. "There's an experimental program in Boston. They want to study Selena full-time, enhance her gifts. She'll live there, become what she was meant to be." "What about me?" I asked. Mom finally looked at me. "You'll keep performing. Pretend to be both twins when needed. The world doesn't have to know Selena's gone to the next level." That night, I couldn't sleep in my own bed, so I went to Selena's room and lay down where she usually slept. Her walls were still covered in those equations, numbers and symbols everywhere in her handwriting. The sick feeling in my stomach wouldn't go away, because I knew Mom was actually going to do this. Tomorrow, she'd start training me to be both of us, and I'd have to act like my sister wasn't being sent away to some research place like a lab rat. The next morning, Mom woke me up at 5 in the morning and dragged me to the dining table. 2 complete outfits were laid out there. One had Selena's favorite blue cardigan, the one she wore to every performance. The other had my usual gray hoodie. Mom had a stopwatch in her hand, and she made me go into the bathroom and practice changing between the outfits as fast as I could. She stood outside the door, timing me and yelling through it about which clients expected which twin. Some people paid extra to see Selena do the math calculations, so I had to be her for those parts. Other people wanted to test both of us, so I had to quick change in bathrooms or closets between questions. Mom kept clicking that stopwatch and telling me I needed to be faster. The rehearsals got worse after breakfast. Mom drilled me on every single one of Selena's habits and movements. She made me practice tilting my head the exact way Selena did when she was calculating something. She recorded my voice and played it back, comparing it to recordings of Selena talking in that flat monotone she used during shows. I messed up the voice twice, couldn't get the pitch right, and Mom told me I wasn't eating breakfast as punishment. She said I needed to take this seriously because our income depended on it, and I was already the weak link. That afternoon, while Mom was on the phone with some booking agent in her room, I snuck into Selena's room and grabbed her tablet. I tried to video call her at the Boston facility using the number Mom had written down. The call didn't even ring. It just went straight to this recorded message about supervised communication hours and how all contact had to be scheduled in advance. I sat there on Selena's bed holding the tablet and feeling completely alone. Mom had made sure we couldn't even talk to each other without her controlling it. That evening, I tried to talk Mom out of the whole plan. I found her in the kitchen and suggested we could just stop doing the performances entirely. I told her I could get a normal job when I was older and we could live like regular people. Mom actually laughed at me like I'd told the funniest joke she'd ever heard. She said we were sitting on a gold mine with Selena's real abilities and my adequate memorization skills. She said I should be grateful she was giving me a role at all instead of just cutting me loose and keeping only Selena. That night, Selena called through the facility's monitored line. Mom put it on speaker in the living room. Selena's voice sounded wrong, too fast and kind of disconnected from reality. She talked about the testing protocols they were running and how the researchers were finally seeing the patterns she'd been trying to explain to everyone. I asked her if she was okay, and if they were treating her well there. She didn't really answer. She just started reciting prime numbers. 2, 3, 5, 7, 11, 13, going up and up. Then she said she had to go document something and the call ended. 2 days before Selena was supposed to leave, Mom staged this whole goodbye dinner. She made us both dress nice and sit together at the table. She took about 50 photos of us smiling and hugging and looking like loving sisters. I watched her type out captions on her phone about sisterly bonds and supporting each other's journeys. The whole thing made me feel sick. Selena just posed for every photo with this mechanical smile, her eyes not really focusing on anything. She was already halfway gone to that place in Boston, and I could see it. The next morning, we drove to the airport. Selena barely looked at me when we hugged goodbye at the security line. Mom was practically bouncing with excitement about the stipend the Boston program was paying her every month. I stood there and watched my twin sister walk through the security checkpoint with her little suitcase. She didn't look back once. The feeling was physical, like someone had reached inside me and cut away a piece I'd always had. 3 days after Selena left, I had my first solo gig at some private collector's mansion across town. I spent 20 minutes locked in the bathroom doing quick changes between the two outfits. I was sweating through both of them, trying to remember which version of me was supposed to know calculus and which one just did calendar dates. I barely pulled it off. I mixed up answers twice when someone asked me a math question while I was supposed to be the calendar twin. But the clients were all drinking expensive wine and eating fancy food, and they didn't seem to notice the mistakes. On the drive home, Mom was more excited than I'd seen her in weeks. She was already counting the cash they'd paid her and booking 2 more events for next week. She told me I'd done adequately, and that with more practice, nobody would ever know there was only one of us performing now. Something inside me went hard and cold right then. Pure dread settled into my chest, and I knew this was my life now until someone stopped it. The next school day, I could barely keep my eyes open during history class. Mr. Itali was talking about the Revolutionary War, but his voice kept fading in and out like a radio losing signal. My head dropped forward and I jerked awake twice before my forehead hit the desk the third time. Mr. Itali stopped mid-sentence and walked over to my desk. He wrote something on a hall pass and told me to go see the nurse. The walk down the empty hallway felt longer than it should have. The nurse's office smelled like hand sanitizer and old Band-Aids. She had me sit on the paper-covered exam table and asked what was wrong. I told her I was just tired from staying up late studying. She looked at me for a long moment, her eyes moving over the dark circles under my eyes, and the way my hands were shaking slightly. She asked if everything was okay at home. The lie came out automatically, smooth and practiced. I said everything was fine, just busy with school stuff. She gave me a pass to rest for 20 minutes on the cot in the back room, but I could feel her watching me the whole time. That evening, Mom was waiting for me at the kitchen table when I got home from the school. She said I was skipping tomorrow for an all-day rehearsal before a big corporate demo on Friday. I started to protest, saying I had a history test I couldn't miss. Mom's voice went flat and cold. She said my real education was learning how to monetize my skills, not memorizing dead presidents. The threat in her tone was clear without her having to spell it out. I remembered the locked room after the research facility, the missed meals, the hours of drills at 3 a.m. I shut my mouth and nodded. Mom smiled and went back to her laptop like nothing had happened. Over the weekend, a local news segment aired about Selena's program in Boston. Mom called me into the living room to watch. The footage showed this sleek glass building with the research facility logo on the front. The reporter talked about groundbreaking cognitive research and mathematical prodigies. Then Selena appeared on screen in a white room with computers and whiteboards covered in equations. She was solving some problem while researchers watched. Mom beamed at the TV, practically glowing with pride. But I couldn't stop staring at Selena. She looked thin, way thinner than when she left 3 weeks ago. Her movements were jittery and fast, her eyes too bright. The camera showed her hands shaking slightly as she wrote on the whiteboard. I felt this weird mix of jealousy and worry twisting in my stomach. Mom kept replaying the segment 3 more times, taking photos of the screen with her phone. Late that night, I lay in bed and pulled out my phone. I started typing a text to Selena asking if she was really okay, if the program was pushing her too hard, if she needed help. My thumb hovered over the send button. Then I remembered Mom monitors both our phones. She checks them every few days, reads through our messages, our search history, everything. I deleted the message word by word and put my phone back on the nightstand. The isolation wrapped around me like a physical thing. I couldn't even talk to my own sister privately anymore. Everything we said went through Mom first. I rolled over and stared at the wall until I finally fell asleep. The next day on the bus to a performance across town, a memory surfaced without warning. I was back in that research facility, sitting in the waiting room after they separated me and Selena for testing. The neurologist, the woman who figured out I was faking, had walked past me. She stopped and looked at me with this expression I couldn't quite read. Not anger or disappointment. Something softer. Almost like pity. She opened her mouth like she wanted to say something, then just shook her head slightly and kept walking. I wondered if she would help if I contacted her somehow. The thought planted itself in my mind and wouldn't leave. I pulled out my phone and searched for the facility name, then put it away before Mom could see from the front seat. Before the performance that night, Mom handed me 2 white pills and a bottle of water. She called them focus vitamins, said they would help me concentrate during the quick changes and rapid-fire questions from the audience. I swallowed them because refusing wasn't an option. Within 20 minutes, my heart was racing, so fast I could feel it in my throat. My hands started shaking and wouldn't stop. The performance was a blur of costume changes and calendar dates and trying not to look like I was about to pass out. Afterward, Mom said I did great, that the pills really helped my focus. When we got home, I said I didn't want to take them anymore. Mom's face went cold. She said if I refused my medicine, then maybe I didn't need privileges like eating dinner with her or having my own room. I took the pills the next 3 nights without arguing. That night after Mom went to bed, I pretended to take the pills but actually hid them in my cheek. I went to the bathroom and spit them into my hand, then flushed them down the toilet. My heart was pounding from the deception, but also from relief at not having those chemicals in my system. I went to my room and pulled out a small notebook I'd hidden inside my mattress, the kind with a lock on it that I'd bought at the dollar store. I wrote down the date, the time, what the pills looked like, how they made me feel, what Mom said when I refused them. It wasn't much, but it felt like something. The first small act of resistance I'd managed that actually belonged to me. 2 days later, the corporate demo happened at a tech company downtown. The building was all glass and steel with expensive modern furniture in the lobby. I spent 40 minutes in the bathroom juggling both identities, changing clothes, switching between the calendar twin and the math twin. The executives kept using words like scaling and productizing and educational software platform. They asked questions and took notes while I performed. One guy kept talking about market demographics and content delivery systems. I felt like an object being looked at and priced, not a person. The anger that flared up in my chest surprised me with how strong it was. I'd been scared and exhausted for so long that feeling actually angry felt almost good. After the demo ended, one of the executives pulled Mom aside near the elevator bank. I pretended to be looking at my phone, but I could hear most of what he said. He told Mom they could build an entire platform around the Genius twins if we were willing to do video content and licensing deals. He used numbers like 6 figures and talked about viral potential and educational market share. Mom's eyes lit up like someone had just told her she won the lottery. She was nodding and smiling and already talking about schedules and contracts. I stood there holding my bag and realized with perfect clarity that this was never going to end unless someone stopped it. Mom would keep booking performances and demos and now video content until I collapsed or ran away or something worse. That night, I used $20 from tip money that a client had given me at the last private event. I walked to the convenience store 3 blocks from our apartment while Mom was in the shower. The audio recorder I bought looked like a pen, the kind students use to record lectures. My hands shook so badly while paying that I almost dropped my change. I kept expecting Mom to somehow know what I was doing, to appear behind me in the store and catch me. But the cashier barely looked up from his phone as he bagged my purchase. I walked home in the dark with the recorder hidden in my jacket pocket, feeling like I'd just stolen something even though I'd paid for it with my own money. The next morning at the school, I barely made it through first period before the office speaker crackled with my name and a request to report to the counseling office. My stomach dropped because I knew what this was about. Miss Bowers was waiting in her small office with 2 chairs and a desk covered in stress balls and motivational posters. She smiled when I walked in, but her eyes looked worried. She asked me to sit down and pulled out a folder with my attendance record. She pointed to the dates I'd missed, 8 days in the past month, and said my teachers were concerned about my exhaustion and the pattern of absences. Her voice was gentle when she asked if there was anything going on at home that was making it hard to attend regularly. I felt the truth pushing against my throat like something alive trying to escape. I wanted to tell her everything about the performances and the pills and Selena being shipped off to Boston. But Mom's voice was in my head warning me about what happens to kids who talk to counselors, and I swallowed the words back down. I told Missy Bowers I was just helping Mom with family business stuff and dealing with my sister's transition to a special program for gifted students. The lies came out smooth and practiced because I'd been rehearsing versions of them for months. Miss Bowers looked at me for a long moment and I could tell she didn't believe me completely. She didn't push, though. Instead, she pulled out her business card and wrote her cell number on the back. She told me her door was always open, and that I could call any time if I needed to talk about anything. I took the card and put it in my pocket, feeling both grateful that someone cared and scared about what might happen if I actually used it. The weight of that card felt huge, like it represented a choice I wasn't ready to make yet. That afternoon, I skipped my last class and walked to the public library 3 blocks from the school. The building was old and quiet, with rows of computers near the reference desk. I signed in using a fake name and pulled up a search engine. My hands shook as I typed in keywords about the psychiatric research facility and neurologist and genius twins. It took 15 minutes, but I finally found Dr. Hugh Crawford's faculty page at the University Medical School. His photo showed a middle-aged man with gray hair and glasses. His bio listed his research interests, including cognitive development and savant syndrome. I clicked on the contact link and stared at the empty email form. I wrote and deleted 3 different versions, trying to figure out what to say. I couldn't be too specific in case Mom somehow saw it, but I needed to be clear enough that he'd remember me. Finally, I sent something short saying I was a former research subject from the twin study last year, and I needed advice about some concerns. My finger hovered over the send button for a full minute before I clicked it. Then I cleared the browser history and logged out, my heart pounding like I'd done something dangerous. When I got home that evening, the red light on the answering machine was blinking. Mom was in the kitchen, and she called me over with this excited look on her face. She hit play on the speaker, and Selena's voice filled the room. My sister sounded wrong, her words coming too fast and her tone too high. She started listing prime numbers, just rattling them off like a recording, then switched to talking about hearing mathematical patterns in people's emotional frequencies. She said the researchers were finally understanding what she'd been trying to explain about the universal code. Mom's face was glowing as she listened. She kept saying things like breakthrough and next level and real genius. All I could hear was my sister losing her grip on reality. Selena's voice had this manic edge that reminded me of how she used to sound during the worst training sessions when she'd been awake for 30 hours. When the message ended, Mom replayed it twice, taking notes on what Selena said about the patterns. I felt sick watching her treat our sister's breakdown like it was some kind of achievement. The next evening, before a high-paying private event at some tech executive's house, Mom came into my room with the pill bottle. She shook out 3 pills instead of the usual 2 and told me I needed extra focus for this performance because the client was considering a long-term contract. I took the pills from her hand and pretended to swallow them with water from my bedside glass. As soon as she turned away, I tucked them into my cheek like I'd practiced. The bitter taste made my eyes water, but I kept my face neutral. When Mom left the room, I went to the bathroom and spit the pills into my hand, then wrapped them in toilet paper and hid them in my pocket to flush later. My heart was pounding from the deception, but I was getting better at these small rebellions. The fake swallowing, the hidden notebook, the email to Crawford. Each one felt like taking back a tiny piece of control. During the event, I managed to slip the pen recorder into my jacket pocket and turn it on before Mom called me backstage for the first identity switch. The client's house had a big finished basement set up like a performance space with a small backstage area behind a curtain. I was changing from my gray hoodie into Selena's blue cardigan when Mom came in. Her voice was low and sharp as she reminded me not to mess up any calculations. She grabbed my shoulders hard enough to hurt and said if I ruined this opportunity, she would make sure I understood what real consequences felt like. Her exact words. The recorder in my pocket was running and catching every syllable. I felt this rush of something that was half fear and half victory, because finally I had proof. After the performance, when I was alone in the bathroom, I played back a few seconds of the recording to make sure it worked. Mom's voice came through clear and threatening, talking about consequences and ruining things. The evidence felt solid and real in a way that made my hands shake. 2 days later, I checked my email at the library during lunch and found a message from Dr. Crawford. His response was careful and professional, saying he remembered me and Selena from the facility screening. He wrote that he was concerned about what I'd mentioned and provided a secure phone number I could call. He also listed some basic steps for documenting concerns about exploitation, things like keeping dated records and noting any medications or threats. The email was short, but I could read the worry between the lines. He ended by saying he hoped I was safe and to reach out if I needed guidance. I read the message 3 times, then copied the phone number into my hidden notebook. Having an adult who believed something was wrong felt like the first real lifeline I'd had in months. The next day, during my lunch break, I walked to a payphone outside a pharmacy 6 blocks from the school. I'd been saving quarters from Mom's tip money, keeping them in an old sock in my drawer. My hands fumbled with the coins as I dialed Crawford's number. He answered on the second ring, and his voice sounded exactly like I remembered from the research facility, calm and measured. I told him the basics as fast as I could, about Mom's plan to have me impersonate both twins and Selena's scary voicemails and the pills Mom was giving me. He listened without interrupting even when I started talking too fast. When I finished, he asked specific questions about my immediate safety and whether I had any adults I could trust. The question made me realize how completely isolated I'd become. I had Miss Bauer's card, but I hadn't used it. I had no relatives who weren't under Mom's control. I had no friends because performances took up all my time. I told him all of this and heard him take a deep breath on the other end. Crawford explained that he couldn't intervene directly without more concrete evidence, but that he could guide me on what to document and how to report safely to authorities who could actually help. He told me to keep detailed records with dates and times of everything Mom did. He said to save the pills if I could and document any threats or concerning behavior. He emphasized that I should reach out to my school counselor as a first step toward getting CPS involved because counselors are mandated reporters. His instructions were clear and specific, giving me a roadmap for what to do next. Before we hung up, he made me promise to call him again if the situation got worse, or if I felt unsafe. I walked back to the school with the quarters still warm in my hand, feeling like I finally had a plan. 2 days later, Mom booked us for a fancy gala at a downtown hotel ballroom. I arrived early with her to help set up backstage. The venue had a small prep room behind the stage with racks for costumes and a mirror. Mom brought 2 outfits on hangers and set them up on opposite sides of the room. Then she took a second jacket, the blue cardigan that was supposed to be Selena's, and propped it carefully on a chair near the stage entrance. She positioned it so from certain angles it looked like someone was sitting there. She even put a water bottle next to it and draped a scarf over the back. I watched her arrange this elaborate fake presence and felt something heavy settle in my chest. This wasn't just a temporary plan anymore. Mom had fully committed to the deception of both twins existing in the same space. She was building props and staging to maintain the illusion. I realized this had become her entire identity, this image of being the mother of genius twins. The money and attention had consumed her, so completely that she would never voluntarily let it end. She would keep booking performances and creating fake setups and pushing pills on me until someone forced her to stop. The performance ended badly, and Mom's silence in the car ride home felt worse than yelling. She gripped the steering wheel so tight her knuckles went white, and I sat pressed against the passenger door counting the minutes until we got to the apartment. When we walked inside, she told me to go to my room and I obeyed, hearing her moving around in the living room unpacking her bag from the venue. I changed into pajamas and got into bed hoping she'd just let me sleep, but 20 minutes later my door opened without a knock. Mom walked straight to my school bag sitting on my desk chair and started pulling everything out, books and folders and loose papers scattering across the floor. She found the pen recorder in the front pocket and held it up to the light, then unscrewed the bottom section. The empty battery compartment stared back at her, and her face went completely blank in that scary way that meant she was past regular anger. She asked me very calmly where the batteries were, and I said I didn't know, that maybe they fell out. But my voice shook, and she knew I was lying. Mom set the recorder down carefully on my desk and told me to get up and come to the dining room, and I followed her on shaking legs. She made me stand at the table while she pulled out all the old training materials, the phone books and calendars and calculation sheets from when we first started. She said since I clearly had too much free time to play spy games, we were going back to basics until I remembered what mattered. For the next 5 hours, she drilled me on calculations and dates and memorization exercises, her voice never rising above normal volume but getting colder with each mistake I made. My eyes kept trying to close and I'd catch myself swaying on my feet and she'd snap her fingers in my face to wake me up. Around 2 a.m., I got a simple subtraction problem wrong and just started crying from exhaustion, and Mom said we could stop when I got 10 problems in a row correct. I finally managed it at 3:15 a.m., and she let me go back to my room and I collapsed onto my bed still wearing my clothes and passed out instantly. The alarm went off 4 hours later for school, and I could barely lift my head off the pillow. Everything hurt, and my brain felt like it was wrapped in cotton, but Mom was already knocking on my door telling me to get ready. I got dressed moving like I was underwater and ate the cereal she put in front of me without tasting it. The bus ride to the school was a blur, and I kept jerking awake when my head would drop forward. In first period English, I fell asleep with my eyes open, staring at my textbook while the teacher's voice faded into background noise. My friend Sarah poked me during the transition to second period and asked if I was okay, and I just nodded and kept walking. At lunch, I sat in the cafeteria with my head down on the table and didn't eat anything. The hallway after fifth period was crowded with kids heading to their next class, and I was trying to navigate through them when someone touched my shoulder. Miss Bowers stood there with her concerned counselor face and asked if I could come to her office for a minute. I wanted to say no, but my brain was too tired to come up with an excuse, so I just followed her down the hall to the guidance office. She closed the door and gestured for me to sit in the chair across from her desk, and I sank into it gratefully. Miss Bowers asked how I was doing, and I said fine automatically, but she kept looking at me with that patient expression that meant she wasn't buying it. She mentioned that several of my teachers had noticed I seemed exhausted lately, and that I'd missed a lot of school recently. I tried to explain about family stuff and helping my mom, but the words came out wrong and jumbled. She asked gently if everything was okay at home, and I heard myself say something about overtraining and having to take pills to focus better, and the second the words left my mouth, I knew I'd messed up. Miss Bowers' whole expression changed from concerned to alarmed, and she leaned forward in her chair. She explained very carefully that as a school counselor, she was something called a mandated reporter, which meant if she thought a student might be getting hurt or not taken care of properly, she had to tell the authorities. The word authorities made my stomach clench with fear. Miss Bowers asked me directly if I felt safe at home, and the question hung in the air between us while my tired brain tried to calculate what would happen if I told the truth versus if I kept lying. If I said I wasn't safe, she'd call someone and Mom would find out and I didn't know what she'd do. If I lied and said everything was fine, I'd have to keep living like this forever, doing performances and pretending to be two people and taking pills that made my heart race. Miss Bowers waited patiently, not pushing, just watching me with kind eyes that made me want to cry. I opened my mouth to answer, but before I could get any words out, there was a knock on the office door. The secretary poked her head in and said my mother was here claiming I had a doctor's appointment and needed to leave early. Miss Bowers's face showed clear doubt, and she looked at me like she was asking permission, but she couldn't legally keep me there if Mom wanted to take me. I stood up slowly, and Ms. Bowers said we could continue this conversation another time, her voice heavy with meaning. Mom was waiting in the main office with her purse over her shoulder and a fake smile on her face. She thanked the secretary and put her hand on my arm, and her fingers dug into my skin hard enough to leave marks. We walked to the car in silence, and she didn't say anything until we were on the road. Then she asked me very quietly what I'd told the counselor, and I said nothing important, just that I was tired. Mom's grip on the steering wheel tightened, and she said we were going to take some time off from the school so I could rest properly before the upcoming events, and I knew that was a lie. She was pulling me out to keep me away from adults who might ask questions. The next week, I barely left the apartment. Mom called the school claiming I had a bad flu and needed to recover, but really she just wanted me isolated where she could watch me constantly. Every morning, she'd wake me up for rehearsals, making me practice quick changes and memorization drills for hours. She'd sit on the couch with her laptop booking new performances while I ran through routines in the living room. She monitored every phone call and checked my computer history, and went through my school bag daily. The walls felt like they were getting closer every day, and I started having trouble sleeping even when she let me rest. I'd lie in bed staring at Selena's equation wall and wondering if this was what it felt like to lose your mind. The only time Mom left me alone was when she had meetings with booking agents or venue coordinators, and even then she'd lock the apartment door from the outside. On the 4th day of isolation, she had a meeting downtown with some agent about a corporate event series. She spent an hour getting ready and checking her appearance in the mirror, and I pretended to be absorbed in memorization exercises. The second she left, I pulled the pen recorder from its hiding spot in my sock drawer and found the spare batteries I'd bought at the convenience store. My hands shook as I loaded them and tested that the device was working. I slipped it into Mom's purse that she'd left on the kitchen counter, burying it under her wallet and makeup bag where she wouldn't feel it. She came back 2 hours later talking on her phone, and I waited until she went to her room before sneaking the recorder back out. I locked myself in the bathroom and plugged in my earbuds, then played back the audio. Most of it was muffled sounds of her purse moving around, but then I heard her voice clearly talking to the agent about payment structures and performance schedules. She mentioned casually that she'd been giving me performance enhancers to keep me sharp during the quick changes, saying it like it was a normal thing any parent would do. The agent didn't even question it, just asked about dosage timing for optimal results. I had 40 minutes of audio, including detailed discussions about monetizing the twin brand and expanding into video content, and Mom describing me as the adequate one who needed chemical help to keep up. I saved the file to my cloud drive and deleted it from the recorder, then put the device back in my sock drawer. That evening, I got an email notification on my phone from the secure portal Crawford had set up. I waited until Mom was watching TV in the living room before opening it in my room with the door closed. The email was brief and professional, but attached was a document labeled as redacted medical records from Selena's sleep study at the Boston facility. I downloaded it and read through the clinical language, most of which I didn't fully understand, but certain phrases jumped out at me. Severe insomnia with average sleep duration of 2 hours per night. Obsessive pattern fixation interfering with basic self-care activities. Declining physical health markers, including weight loss and elevated stress hormones. Recommendation for psychiatric evaluation and possible program modification. The guilt hit me so hard I had to sit down on my bed. I'd been jealous of Selena's special treatment. Jealous that she got to go to a fancy research facility while I was stuck doing performances. But she wasn't living some amazing life being celebrated for her gifts. She was pushed until she broke, just like Mom was pushing me. The difference was that Selena's brain had real abilities Mom could exploit, so the exploitation went deeper. I wanted to call my sister, but Mom monitored the phone and I couldn't risk it. I saved the document to my cloud drive with the audio file and tried to figure out what to do with the information. That night at dinner, I tried to bring it up carefully, saying I was worried about Selena, and maybe the program was too intense. Mom didn't even look up from her plate. She said I was just jealous that Selena was fulfilling her potential while I was stuck being the adequate one. The dismissal was so casual and complete that it actually clarified something for me. Mom would never prioritize either of us over the money and attention we brought her. We weren't her daughters, we were her products, and she'd keep using us until we were completely used up or someone forced her to stop. The next morning, while Mom was in the shower, I went to her desk in the corner of the living room and started searching through the drawers. I'd seen her put some papers in there the other day, and I wanted to know what they were. The top drawer was full of bills and junk mail, but the second drawer had a folder labeled Boston Program in Mom's handwriting. I pulled it out and opened it carefully, my ears tuned to the sound of the shower still running. The documents inside were full of legal language that was hard to understand. Long paragraphs about research protocols and parental consent and liability waivers. I skimmed through looking for anything that seemed important, and my eyes caught on a section titled Exclusive Research Access. It talked about Selena being available for testing and observation at any time the facility requested, and how Mom agreed to not interfere with the research protocols even if Selena showed signs of distress. Another section mentioned parental consent for experimental protocols and listed things like sleep manipulation and cognitive stress testing and pharmaceutical trials. My stomach turned reading it because it sounded like Mom had signed away Selena's right to say no to anything they wanted to do to her. I heard the shower turn off and quickly took photos of every page with my phone, then stuffed the folder back in the drawer exactly how I'd found it. I was back on the couch pretending to read a textbook when Mom came out in her bathrobe with wet hair. I pulled up the photos later that night after Mom went to bed and zoomed in to read the fine print at the bottom of the contract. There was a whole section about compensation that made my hands shake. Mom received a monthly stipend of $2,000 just for Selena being enrolled in the program, but the real money was in the milestone bonuses. If Selena hit certain cognitive benchmarks, the stipend increased by $500 per milestone. If she made what they called breakthrough discoveries in pattern recognition or mathematical processing, Mom got a lump sum bonus of $10,000. The contract spelled it out clearly, payments tied directly to how hard they could push Selena's brain. Mom had literally sold my sister's brain function for profit, agreeing to let researchers do whatever they wanted to her, as long as the checks kept coming. The exploitation was even worse than I'd thought, because it wasn't just about performance money anymore. Mom had a financial incentive for Selena to be pushed past her limits, for her to achieve breakthroughs even if it meant she couldn't sleep or eat or function like a normal person. Every equation Selena solved, every pattern she identified, every cognitive test she passed, it all translated directly into Mom's bank account. I felt sick reading it and had to put my phone down. I'd been collecting evidence for days now, the audio recordings and the contract photos and Crawford's medical documents, but I didn't know if it was enough. I didn't know if anyone would actually do anything to stop this, or if Mom would just keep finding ways to profit off us until we both ended up like Selena, brilliant and broken and completely alone. I grabbed my phone and started taking pictures of every page in that folder, my fingers moving fast because I could still hear the shower running, but didn't know how much time I had left. Each page got 2 shots to make sure the words were clear enough to read later, and I kept glancing at the bathroom door between clicks. The contract had maybe 15 pages total, and I got through them all in under 3 minutes, then opened my cloud storage app and started uploading while my pulse hammered in my ears. The upload bar crept across the screen so slowly I wanted to scream, but finally it finished and I copied the link and opened my email to Crawford. I typed fast, asking if research programs normally had these kinds of terms, hitting send before I could second-guess myself, then shoved the folder back in the drawer exactly how I'd found it. Mom came out of the bathroom 2 minutes later and I was back on the couch pretending to study, but my phone felt like it was burning a hole in my pocket. Crawford emailed back that same night, around 9 when Mom was watching TV in her room. His message was short, but the words made my stomach flip over. He said the contract had several parts that seemed really weird for a legitimate research program, especially the stuff about Mom getting paid more if Selena hit certain benchmarks, and the part where Mom agreed not to interfere even if Selena was upset or struggling. He wrote that both Selena and I were in situations that needed adult help right away, and he thought I should talk to my school counselor about reporting to CPS as soon as possible. The way he emphasized as soon as possible made everything feel more urgent and scary, like maybe things were even worse than I'd thought. The Boston place let me have a supervised phone call with Selena that evening around 8. A staff member called our apartment line and said they had Selena ready to talk for 15 minutes. When my sister came on the phone, her voice sounded too fast, like someone had sped up a recording. She jumped from talking about a number sequence she'd found in her breakfast cereal to explaining how she was close to solving what she called the universal pattern. And when I tried to ask how she was feeling or if she was eating okay, she just circled back to the math. She kept saying things like the numbers were speaking to her, and she could hear patterns in everything now, even in the way people breathed. I could hear the obsession eating her up from the inside, turning her into something that wasn't quite human anymore, just this math-calculating machine that couldn't stop. The call ended suddenly when I heard voices getting loud in the background on Selena's side. Someone was saying something about episode management in a firm tone, and then the line just went dead. I sat there holding the phone in our quiet apartment, listening to the dial tone, feeling completely useless. My sister was falling apart in Boston, and I couldn't do anything to help her, and Mom was probably making money off every breakdown Selena had. The morning of the big gala arrived 3 days later. Mom had been talking about this event for weeks because it paid more than our usual gigs, some kind of charity thing where rich people wanted to see the genius twins perform. She woke me up early and made breakfast, acting all cheerful and normal, but then when she said she needed to run errands before we left, she walked me to the apartment door and I heard the lock click from the outside. She called through the door that it was for safety while she was gone, but I knew what it really meant. She was making sure I couldn't run away or call anyone or do anything except wait for her to come back and take me to the performance. I spent 2 hours sitting on the couch preparing myself mentally for what I was planning to do. I was going to fail so badly at the performance that adults would have no choice but to pay attention, even if it meant Mom's rage afterward. Mom came back around noon and we drove to the venue in her car. I'd hidden the reactivated recorder in my bra that morning, the small device pressing against my ribs under my shirt. During the drive, I kept going over my plan in my head, figuring out which questions I would mess up and how to make it obvious something was wrong without making it look like I was faking on purpose. My fear felt like something alive in my chest, but Crawford's last message kept playing in my mind about how I needed to act before things got worse. Mom chatted about the client list and how impressed everyone would be, completely unaware that I was planning to destroy everything she'd built. My phone buzzed with a text just as Mom was parking the car. Crawford's message said that making a big scene might actually be dangerous for me and suggested I try a different approach. He wrote that he'd alerted someone through Miss Bowers, a CPS investigator named Palmer Garza, who should be at the venue, and maybe I should try to connect with him instead of deliberately failing the performance. I felt torn reading it, stuck between wanting to act right away and being scared I'd make everything worse if I did it wrong. We walked into the venue lobby, and I saw Missy Bowers standing near the registration desk. My counselor spotted me and walked over with a man beside her, someone I'd never seen before. Miss Bowers introduced him as Palmer Garza from Child Protective Services, and the relief that hit me was so strong I almost started crying right there in the lobby. Palmer had this calm way of talking, very professional, and he asked if we could speak privately for a few minutes. I nodded and glanced across the room where Mom was watching us with narrow eyes, clearly trying to figure out what was happening. Palmer led me to a quiet corner backstage, away from all the people setting up for the event. Miss Bowers came too and stood nearby while I gave Palmer the fastest explanation I could manage. I told him about how I had to pretend to be both twins at performances, about the pills Mom gave me, about being kept home from the school, and isolated from other people, about Selena getting worse and worse in Boston while Mom collected money based on her test results. Palmer took notes the whole time and asked really specific questions about evidence, like did I have proof of the medications or recordings of Mom's threats, or any documentation about Selena's condition. I promised him I had recordings and photos that I could give him by the end of the night, and he seemed satisfied with that answer. Palmer explained what CPS needed to build a case strong enough to help us. He said they needed documented proof of the medications Mom was giving me, clear evidence of her threats or harmful behavior, and any records that showed Selena's concerning condition at the Boston facility. His careful and organized approach helped me focus through the panic that was trying to take over my brain. He went through a list of what would be most useful, asking about dates and times and specific incidents. And I realized that all the evidence I'd been collecting over the past weeks, the recordings and the photos and the detailed notes, might actually be enough to make someone do something to help both me and Selena. I tell Palmer I need to use the bathroom and he nods, understanding what I'm really doing. My legs feel shaky as I walk through the backstage area, past crew members adjusting lights and sound equipment. Mom's purse sits on a folding chair near the dressing room entrance, unguarded because she's busy schmoozing with the event coordinator. I grab it and duck into the single-stall bathroom, locking the door behind me. My hands shake so badly I almost drop the whole bag while digging through it. The pill baggies are tucked in a zippered pocket, 4 of them with dates written on the labels in Mom's handwriting. I shove them into my jacket pocket. The pen recorder is clipped to the inside pocket where I left it this morning, still running. I check the battery indicator and it shows 3/4 full, enough to have captured everything from the car ride to the backstage prep. Everything goes into my pockets and I zip them closed, then flush the toilet and run water in the sink to make it sound like I actually used the bathroom. When I look in the mirror, my face is pale and sweaty. I splash cold water on my cheeks and take 3 deep breaths like my old therapist taught me years ago, before Mom pulled me out of therapy for interfering with our schedule. The stage manager calls my name over the intercom system, saying they're ready for the demonstration to begin. I walk out of the bathroom and see Mom waiting near the stage entrance, her smile tight and warning. She adjusts my collar and whispers that I better not mess this up, that these clients are paying triple the normal rate. I nod and walk past her onto the stage. The lights are bright and hot, making me squint as I take my position at the podium. About 200 people fill the hotel ballroom, mostly business types in suits holding drinks. The MC introduces me as one half of the famous Mansfield twins, explaining our supposed accident and remarkable abilities. I'm supposed to demonstrate my calendar calculation skills first, then quick change backstage and come back as Selena for the math portion. The MC asks me what day of the week March 15th, 1987 fell on. I know the answer is Sunday. I've done this calculation hundreds of times, but instead I say Thursday and let the pause stretch out. People in the audience glance at each other. The MC laughs nervously and tries another date. October 3rd, 1965. I know it's Sunday. I say Wednesday. More murmuring from the crowd. Mom's face appears at the edge of the stage, her expression murderous. The MC asks a third question, easier this time. December 25th, 2010. Everyone knows Christmas 2010 was a Saturday. I look straight at Mom and say Tuesday. The audience reaction shifts from confused to concerned. I grab the microphone stand to steady myself and tell the MC I feel dizzy, that something's wrong. The stage lights seem too bright suddenly, and I'm not faking the way my vision blurs at the edges. I step away from the podium and head toward the stage stairs. The MC calls after me asking if I need help, but I keep walking. Mom intercepts me the second I'm off stage, her hand clamping around my upper arm hard enough that I feel her nails dig through my jacket sleeve. She pulls me into the narrow hallway that leads to the dressing rooms, away from the crew members and other performers. Her voice comes out in a hiss, low enough that the nearby staffers can't hear but sharp enough to cut. She says I just humiliated her in front of the biggest clients we've ever had, that I've ruined months of relationship building and thousands of dollars in potential contracts. I force myself to stay calm and let her talk, remembering that the pen recorder in my bra is catching every word. She says when we get home she's going to make me understand what consequences really mean, that I'll be doing calculation drills until my brain bleeds. She mentions the pills, saying maybe she should have given me a double dose tonight because clearly the normal amount isn't keeping me focused enough. Her grip on my arm tightens and she shakes me once, hard enough that my teeth click together. She says I better get back out there right now and fix this disaster, That I'll apologize to the audience and blame it on a migraine or low blood sugar or whatever excuse sounds believable. I can see the rehearsal schedule she mentioned earlier sticking out of her other pocket, the one where she's blocked out my entire next week for punishment training sessions. A venue staffer walks past and glances at us, her expression uncertain, but Mom immediately switches to her public voice and says she's just helping me feel better. The staffer keeps walking but looks back once before disappearing around the corner. I pull away from Mom and tell her I need to splash water on my face, that I'll be right back. She lets me go but warns me not to take too long, that the clients are waiting. I walk quickly toward the bathrooms, checking over my shoulder to make sure she's not following. Palmer is waiting outside the women's bathroom like we planned, standing casually like he's just checking his phone. I slip inside and he follows after checking that the hallway is empty. The bathroom is small with just 2 stalls and a long mirror, empty except for us. My hands shake as I pull out the pill baggies and set them on the counter. Palmer takes photos of each one with his phone, making sure the dates and Mom's handwriting are visible. I unclip the pen recorder from inside my bra and hand it to him. He plugs in earbuds and listens to the last few minutes, his expression getting more serious as he hears Mom's threats. I pull up my phone and show him the contract photos I took from Mom's desk, scrolling through each page while he takes notes. He asks if I have any other documentation, and I mention the notebook hidden in my mattress at home with dates and times of training sessions. Palmer makes 3 quick calls while I wait by the sink, my heart pounding so hard I can feel it in my throat. The first call sounds like it's to his supervisor, the second to someone he calls the on-call judge, and the third to what sounds like a police contact. He uses words like immediate risk and documented evidence and emergency protective order. A loud knock on the bathroom door makes me jump. A voice from outside says there's been a complaint about a disturbance backstage and asks if everyone inside is okay. Palmer opens the door and shows his CPS badge to the 2 security guards standing there. One of them is the same staffer who walked past when Mom was threatening me in the hallway. The staffer tells the security guards she heard a woman yelling threats at someone and saw her grab a young person's arm aggressively. She points at me and asks if I'm okay, if I need help. Palmer asks her to describe exactly what she heard and saw, and she repeats Mom's threats about consequences and making me understand, about the pills and the training schedule. The security guards exchange glances and one of them radios for the venue manager. Palmer thanks the staffer and asks if she'd be willing to provide a written statement about what she witnessed. She nods and says she works with youth programs on weekends and knows what concerning behavior looks like. The corroboration from someone who doesn't know me or Mom seems to solidify something in Palmer's assessment. He tells me he's filing an emergency report right now and that things are going to move quickly from this point forward. Palmer asks me directly if I can be safe at home tonight. The question hangs in the air between us, and I know this is the moment where I either keep lying or admit the truth. My voice comes out quiet when I say no, that I can't be safe there, that Mom will follow through on her threats the second we're alone. The admission feels like defeat and relief at the same time, like I'm finally asking for help after years of pretending everything was fine. Palmer nods like he expected that answer and makes another call. He explains to whoever is on the other end that emergency protective measures need to be in place before I leave the venue, that there's documented evidence of threats and medications and a concerning pattern of exploitation. He listens for a minute, then asks me if I have any relatives or trusted adults who could provide temporary housing. I shake my head and tell him it's just been me and Mom since my dad left when we were babies, that Mom's parents died years ago and we don't have contact with anyone else. Palmer tells the person on the phone that emergency foster placement will be necessary and asks about availability tonight. The speed of everything makes my head spin, but I cling to the structure of official intervention like it's the only solid thing in my world. My phone buzzes in my pocket and I pull it out to see Crawford's name on the screen. I answer, and his voice sounds urgent as he tells me that Selena had a significant episode at the facility earlier today. He explains that she became fixated on a specific calculation and couldn't be redirected for over 3 hours, that she was counting and recounting something about prime number patterns until the medical staff had to intervene. The panic state was prolonged enough that the facility's psychiatric team is recommending a full evaluation, something beyond the cognitive testing they've been doing. Crawford says he wanted me to know before tomorrow's emergency meeting that Mom has been notified about Selena's condition. He asks if I'm somewhere safe right now, and I tell him about Palmer and the venue situation. Crawford sounds relieved and says he'll make sure the Boston facility's medical reports are available for whatever proceedings come next. He mentions that Selena asked for me during the episode, that she kept saying she needed to tell me something about the patterns, but couldn't articulate what it was. The image of my sister trapped in her own head, counting endlessly, makes my chest tight with guilt and worry. Palmer finishes his call and explains that there's an emergency joint meeting scheduled for tomorrow morning with CPS, representatives from Selena's program, and Mom. He says I'll attend with Bowers as my support person, that the school counselor has already been contacted and is on her way to the venue. The speed of everything is overwhelming and I have to sit down on the closed toilet lid to keep from feeling dizzy. Palmer asks if I understand what's happening and I nod, even though it feels like the floor is tilting under me. He explains that tonight I'll go to a temporary foster home that's been approved for emergency placements, that I'll have my own room and basic necessities provided. Tomorrow we'll meet with all the relevant parties and start building a longer-term plan for both me and Selena. He says the most important thing right now is that I'm safe, and that the pattern of exploitation is being interrupted. I cling to the structure of official intervention like a lifeline, like the first time in years that adults are actually paying attention and taking action. The bathroom feels too small suddenly, and I stand up, needing to move even though there's nowhere to go. Palmer tells me to stay here while he goes to brief the venue manager and coordinate with the security team about keeping Mom away from me until the protective order is processed. The venue manager's office is small and windowless, with fluorescent lights that make everything look pale and sickly. Mom sits in one of the chairs across from the manager's desk, her posture perfect and her expression carefully controlled. Palmer stands near the door with the security supervisor while Bowers sits next to me in a show of support. The manager looks uncomfortable as Palmer explains the situation, using careful language about concerns regarding child welfare and documented evidence of exploitation. Mom immediately switches into her performance mode, the one where she's the concerned parent who's been misunderstood. She claims the training was just enrichment activities, the kind any dedicated parent might provide to help their gifted children reach their full potential. She says the pills were herbal supplements for focus and concentration, completely natural and available at any health food store. Her voice is smooth and practiced as she talks about how much she's sacrificed to support both her daughter's extraordinary abilities. She mentions the expense of the Boston program, the time spent driving to performances and managing bookings, the way she's dedicated her entire life to helping us succeed. The performance is flawless, and I watch her try to charm her way out of consequences like she's done so many times before. She looks at me with this expression of hurt confusion, like she can't understand why I'm doing this to her after everything she's given up for us. Crawford's face appears on the laptop screen that the venue manager has set up on the desk. He's calling in from his office at the research facility, and his expression is serious and professional. He starts by presenting medical data from Selena's time at the Boston facility, pulling up charts and graphs that show sleep patterns over the past 3 months. The data reveals that Selena is averaging less than 4 hours of sleep per night, that her sleep deprivation has been getting progressively worse since she arrived. He shows documentation of obsessive behaviors, including logs where facility staff recorded her spending 6 to 8 hours at a time, working on mathematical calculations without breaks for food or bathroom needs. Her physical health markers are declining, with weight loss and elevated stress hormones that indicate chronic strain. Crawford presents all of this in clinical, measured language that makes it impossible to dismiss as exaggeration or misunderstanding. He explains that the facility's initial assessment classified Selena's abilities as remarkable, but that subsequent monitoring has revealed concerning patterns of obsessive fixation and deteriorating self-care. The medical team's notes describe episodes where Selena becomes so absorbed in pattern recognition that she loses awareness of her physical needs and surroundings. Crawford's clinical presentation of my sister's deterioration fills the small office, and I watch Mom's confidence falter for the first time. Her smooth explanations start to sound hollow against the weight of actual medical documentation. She tries to interrupt, to explain that Selena has always been intense about her work, but Crawford continues presenting data that shows the difference between dedicated focus and harmful obsession. The meeting stretches on as Crawford methodically dismantles every excuse Mom tries to offer, and I realize that maybe, finally, someone with authority is seeing through her performance to the damage underneath. Palmer reaches into his briefcase and pulls out the small audio recorder, the same pen-shaped device I'd hidden in my bra during performances. He sets it on the desk between us and presses play, and suddenly Mom's voice fills the small office with perfect clarity. The first clip is from backstage at the gala, her words sharp and threatening as she grabs my arm. "You're going to ruin everything," her recorded voice hisses. "If you mess this up, I'll make sure you understand what real consequences feel like." The audio quality is better than I expected, picking up every word without distortion. Palmer lets it play for another 10 seconds, Mom's voice continuing with explicit details about the rehearsal schedule and how I need to stop being difficult. He stops the recording and looks directly at Mom, whose face has gone pale. The second clip starts playing before she can speak, this one from a training session in our apartment. "Take the pills," Mom's voice commands. "These will help you focus during the performance. I don't care if they make your hands shake. You need to concentrate." Palmer fast-forwards through several similar exchanges, each one documenting Mom's casual mentions of giving me medication, without any discussion of what it actually was or whether I needed it. The venue manager shifts uncomfortably in his chair, clearly not expecting this level of evidence. Palmer switches to a different file, this one capturing Mom on the phone with a booking agent discussing payment structures. "The twins bring in $5,000 per event," her voice explains proudly. "The younger one handles the calendar work, the older one does the real math. We can do back-to-back bookings as long as we space them right." Her tone is purely business, discussing me and Selena like we're products she's selling rather than her daughters. Palmer stops the recording and pulls out a folder, spreading documents across the desk in front of Mom. "School attendance records show I've missed 23 days in the past 2 months, he explains, pointing to highlighted sections. "The pattern matches exactly with your booking schedule." Mom tries to interrupt, but Palmer continues, laying out printed screenshots of the Boston facility contract next to the attendance records. "These contract terms show financial incentives tied directly to Selena's cognitive performance," he says. "Monthly stipends that increase with each milestone, bonus payments for breakthrough discoveries." His finger traces the relevant sections, making it impossible for anyone in the room to miss the implications. Mom's smooth explanations from earlier sound hollow now, her claims about enrichment activities and parental dedication crumbling under the weight of actual documentation. The venue manager excuses himself, clearly wanting no part of whatever legal situation is unfolding in his office. Palmer presents one final document, a photo I'd taken of the pill bottles Mom kept in her purse. The labels show they're not herbal supplements at all, but prescription stimulants, the kind that require doctor oversight and definitely shouldn't be given to kids without medical supervision. Mom's face cycles through emotions, from shock to anger, to something that looks like fear, and I watch her realize that her performance isn't working this time. Palmer closes the folder and explains that based on this evidence, he's filing for an emergency protective order. The meeting shifts into procedural territory, Palmer outlining next steps while Mom sits frozen in her chair. A temporary order will restrict her from directing any performances or profiting from either of us, he explains. All contact will be supervised by CPS until a full investigation is complete. The words wash over me in waves, relief and fear mixing together until I can barely process what's happening. Miss Bowers squeezes my shoulder gently, a small gesture that somehow makes everything feel more real. Crawford's voice comes through the laptop speaker, offering to provide additional medical documentation about Selena's condition to support the protective order. Palmer nods and makes notes, the efficiency of the process both comforting and overwhelming. Mom finally finds her voice, trying one last time to spin the situation, but Palmer cuts her off firmly. The evidence speaks for itself, he says. We'll schedule a full hearing within the week, but for tonight these restrictions are in effect immediately. The meeting ends with paperwork and signatures, official documents that transform everything from private family dysfunction into a legal case. Palmer walks me and Mr. Bowers out to the parking lot while Mom stays behind to sign more forms. You're safe now, he tells me, and I want to believe him, even though the fear still sits heavy in my chest. That evening, Palmer drives me to a house in a quiet neighborhood about 20 minutes from our apartment. A woman named Rita answers the door, her smile warm but not overly friendly, the kind of expression that feels practiced but genuine. She's been a foster parent for 6 years, Palmer explains as we stand in the entryway. She has experience with emergency placements and understands the situation. Rita shows me to a small bedroom on the second floor, the space simple but clean with a bed, desk, and dresser. The lock on the door is on the inside, she points out casually, and you control it. No one enters without your permission. The detail feels significant, this tiny piece of control that I haven't had in years. Palmer goes over logistics with Rita downstairs while I sit on the edge of the bed, running my hands over the plain blue comforter. The house is quiet in a way that feels strange after months of constant performance pressure and Mom's voice always in my ear. I can hear Rita and Palmer talking in low voices, discussing meal times and school arrangements and therapy appointments. My bag sits by the door, hastily packed by a CPS worker who went to our apartment while Mom was still at the venue. I unzip it and find clothes thrown together without any organization, my toothbrush and the small notebook I'd been hiding in my mattress where I documented Mom's training sessions. Palmer knocks gently before entering, respecting the boundary even though the door is open. He hands me a folder with information about the case timeline, contact numbers, and a schedule for the next few days. Miss Bowers will check in tomorrow, he says, and we'll get you back to the school as soon as you're ready. He leaves and I'm alone in this strange room that's supposed to be safe, and the absence of fear feels physical, like something that was pressing down on me has suddenly lifted. I lie down on the bed fully clothed, staring at the ceiling and trying to process that I don't have to perform tomorrow. No one is going to wake me at 3 a.m. for drills. No one is going to threaten me if I mess up a calculation. The thought should feel liberating, but instead it just feels empty, like I've been running for so long that stopping doesn't make sense yet. Rita brings me dinner on a tray, chicken and rice that tastes normal and unremarkable, and she doesn't push conversation when I barely respond to her questions. The night stretches out long and quiet, and I spend it lying awake in this room with a lock I control, feeling the weight of everything that happened today settle into something I can maybe, eventually, carry. The next morning, Palmer calls with an update about Selena. She's staying at the Boston facility but under different conditions now, he explains. The research protocol has been suspended and she's under independent medical oversight instead. Mom's access is limited to supervised video calls twice a week, and the facility's psychiatric team is handling her care with actual medical standards, rather than experimental procedures. I ask if Selena knows what happened, and Palmer says the doctors are explaining things gradually, making sure she understands that the changes are for her safety. He mentions that she needs stabilization and proper psychiatric care before anyone makes decisions about long-term placement. The word stabilization sticks with me, this clinical term for what's probably my sister finally getting help for the obsessive patterns that were consuming her. I feel grateful that someone is prioritizing her actual well-being instead of her mathematical abilities. Palmer mentions that Mom is cooperating with the protective order so far, which surprises me until he explains that her lawyer probably advised compliance to avoid criminal charges. The investigation is ongoing, he says, but the priority is making sure both you and Selena are safe and getting appropriate support. 2 weeks pass in a strange new routine of school, foster home, and waiting for updates. Palmer calls one afternoon to explain the resolution of Mom's case. She's avoiding criminal charges through a negotiated agreement, he tells me. The terms require her to complete parenting classes, attend therapy, cease all exploitation of her children, and submit to financial monitoring. My first reaction is anger that she's not being punished more severely, that everything she did to us for years just results in some classes and supervision. Palmer must hear it in my voice because he explains carefully that the priority is our safety and stability, not revenge. Prosecuting her would mean a trial where you'd have to testify, he says. Months of legal proceedings and uncertainty. This agreement gets you and Selena protected now, with clear consequences if she violates any terms. I understand the logic, but it still feels wrong. Like Mom is getting away with something even though I know the protective order and financial monitoring are significant restrictions. The agreement includes provisions that she can't contact either of us except through supervised channels, can't profit from any past or future performances, and has to repay certain funds that CPS determined were obtained through exploitation. Palmer sends me a copy of the full agreement. Pages of legal language that basically mean Mom's control over us is officially over. Ms. Bowers arranges for me to start therapy the following week, connecting me with someone named Cecilia Moore who specializes in family trauma and exploitation. The first session happens in a small office downtown, the space decorated with calming colors and comfortable furniture that's clearly meant to put people at ease. Cecilia is maybe 40, with dark hair and an expression that manages to be both professional and genuinely kind. She explains how therapy works, emphasizing that I control what we talk about and how fast we move. The first few sessions, I barely say anything, sitting in the chair across from her and giving one-word answers to her gentle questions. She doesn't push or try to force me to open up, just maintains a patient presence that somehow makes the silence feel okay instead of awkward. By the fourth session, I start talking more. Small details about the performances and Mom's training methods spilling out in fragments. Cecilia listens without judgment, occasionally asking clarifying questions, but mostly letting me set the pace. We talk about feeling worthless except as a performance tool, about watching Selena get praised while I was called the liability, about the constant fear of messing up and facing Mom's anger. The sessions don't fix anything immediately, but they create this space where I can start unpacking years of damage without feeling like I have to perform, or pretend, or be anything other than honest. Palmer arranges a supervised video call with Selena after I've been in foster care for 2 weeks. I sit at Rita's kitchen table with the laptop positioned so the CPS monitor can see the screen, my hands shaking slightly as the call connects. Selena appears on screen looking different from the last time I saw her, her face fuller and her eyes clearer even though I can tell she's medicated. Her hair is pulled back neatly and she's wearing normal clothes instead of the research facility uniform I'd seen in photos. We talk carefully at first, both of us aware of the monitor listening and the strangeness of this supervised conversation. "How are you?" I ask, and she gives me a small smile that looks more genuine than any expression I've seen from her in months. "I'm okay," she says. "The doctors here are different. They actually care about whether I'm sleeping and eating, not just what math I can do." We talk around the patterns and equations at first, discussing the facility's routine and the therapy she started. Then she takes a breath and admits something I wasn't expecting. "I was scared," she says quietly. "I didn't know how to stop and Mom kept pushing for more and I thought if I just solved one more pattern, figured out one more sequence, then maybe it would be enough. But it was never enough." Her honesty breaks something open in me and I tell her I was scared too, that I felt trapped in the performances and didn't know how to get out. For the first time in years, we're actually talking to each other instead of competing or performing, just two sisters trying to figure out what happened to us. The call lasts 30 minutes, and when it ends, I feel something I haven't felt towards Selena in a long time, something that might eventually become a real relationship, instead of the twisted dynamic Mom created. A few days later, Rita tells me someone called asking about a speaking opportunity for me, claiming to represent a motivational speaking company. The request came through a proxy organization, carefully worded to sound legitimate, but Rita immediately flagged it as suspicious. She shows me the email and I recognize Mom's style in the phrasing, her attempt to circumvent the protective order by routing the booking through a third party. I decline without hesitation, telling Rita to report it to Palmer. She makes the call while I listen, and hearing her calmly explain the situation to CPS feels powerful instead of terrifying. Palmer confirms he'll document the violation attempt, and says it strengthens the case for maintaining strict boundaries. The fact that I can set this boundary, that I can say no and have adults support that decision, feels significant. I'm not Mom's product anymore, not something she can book and profit from. The realization settles into me slowly, this new reality where my worth isn't measured by performance value. After a month in foster care, Palmer and Ms. Bowers helped me return to the school full-time. The transition is easier than I expected, mostly because Ms. Bowers arranges for me to join an art club that meets Tuesday and Thursday afternoons. The club is small, maybe 8 students, and nobody knows about my history or the performances or any of it. We work on different projects, mostly pottery and painting, and the teacher is relaxed about skill level. I'm terrible at pottery. My bowl's lopsided and my mug's uneven, but nobody cares or judges. For 2 hours a week, I get to be a regular student making mediocre art, focused on shaping clay instead of calculating dates or pretending to be a genius. One of the other students, a quiet girl named Maya, shows me a better way to center the clay on the wheel. Her casual help, offered without any expectation or agenda, feels like a small piece of normal teenage life that I've been missing. Palmer forwards me an email from Crawford a few days later, an update about Selena's progress that makes me feel cautiously hopeful. "She's sleeping better with proper structure and medication," Crawford writes. "The obsessive pattern recognition, has been redirected into supervised mathematical exercises that don't consume her entire identity. She's eating regularly, maintaining healthier boundaries with her work, and showing interest in activities beyond mathematics. He mentions that she's been asking about me and wants to increase our call frequency from once a week to twice a week. The medical team supports this, he explains, as maintaining family connections is important for her recovery. I email Palmer back immediately saying, yes, I want more calls with Selena. The hope in Crawford's message, the concrete evidence that my sister is getting better, makes the past month of uncertainty feel worth it. We're both still figuring out who we are outside of Mom's exploitation, but at least we're doing it with actual support instead of being used and pushed until we break. Mom's text comes through on a Tuesday afternoon while I'm doing homework in my foster home's kitchen. The message is full of therapy speak about mistakes and learning to be better, with phrases like growth journey and understanding my patterns that sound copied from a self-help book. I read it twice, feeling nothing except maybe a small sense of satisfaction that she's being forced to go through the motions. Instead of replying, I screenshot the entire conversation and send it to Palmer with a short note explaining it's from her mandated sessions. He responds within an hour saying he'll add it to the case file, and the exchange feels mechanical and safe. The fact that I can treat her words as evidence instead of absorbing them like I used to feels significant, like I've finally learned to protect myself with documentation instead of just taking the hits. 3 months after the gala, my life has settled into something that almost feels normal. I wake up for school without Mom's 3 a.m. drills, attend classes without being pulled out for performances, and spend Tuesday and Thursday afternoons in art club making terrible pottery that nobody judges. Therapy with Cecilia happens every Wednesday, and I'm slowly learning to talk about the years of feeling worthless without my voice shaking. Selena and I have our supervised video calls each Sunday, and she sounds clearer now, less consumed by the math, more like an actual person. There's no perfect ending where everything is magically fixed and we're all happy. But I'm safer now, living with people who see me as a person instead of a product, and my next steps are clear enough. Finish the semester, keep showing up to therapy, maintain the calls with my sister, and figure out who I actually am when nobody's making me perform.